Hello world of YouTube and welcome to another episode of Viral's Movie Reviews, where I review movies that you guys suggest. I go to the movies and see, or I feel like discussing. Switching up the backdrop, new permanent backdrop. Why I didn't film in front of my movies before, I don't know. But today, we're doing a bit of a twofer. Because I already talked about it in my end of the year list last year, but I figured I would discuss a little more in depth my feelings on Infinity War and go into the recent Avengers film, Endgame. This review's got spoiler talk in it. I'm going to lay that out flat right off the top. Now, like I said in my wrap-up of last year, I love how Thanos came together in Infinity War. It was a great performance by Josh Brolin. He was this imposing presence throughout the entire film. I like how he put some of the stronger heroes in check. And I like how the story went forward. I like how it kept jumping between these different parties of characters like Iron Man and Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, Groot and Thor. I liked how everyone kind of had their own... It was like a big, epic, huge comic. Everyone had their own goal to achieve to meet the same end, to stop Thanos. And it was also refreshing to see them come to that demise. You know, we're in a 10 years of films where people don't really lose much. So it was nice to see stakes set up for the next film. I think the cinematography is great. I think the action sequences are pretty fucking awesome. Some of my favorites in the MCU for sure, like the pulling of the moon down on Thanos' homeworld. I like even the first fight scene in New York. I like that a lot. Doctor Strange, it was interesting to see him play with more of the MCU, and it made me want to see him play with more of the MCU because he's just fun to watch. And of course, Peter goddamn Parker, Tom Holland's Peter Parker, nails his performance in this. I just, so good, so great. And I love his send-off in that film. Like, I cried. You guys know me, I love me some Spider-Man, and it was sad to see him dusted. Even though I knew he was going to be coming back, it was still sad because, well, he's Spidey. He's a precious thing to me. But yeah, it was great. I kind of had a lot of hopes for Endgame, like everybody else who had seen Infinity War, and do I think they met those expectations? Kind of. I don't think it's as good as Infinity War, but I think Endgame is still a fucking spectacle of a film. To make the scope that was already big in Infinity War even bigger without losing track of anything, I feel like was accomplished well by the Russos. I think Endgame has some pacing issues, because it's trying to tell a few different stories in one, but I ultimately think it comes together really nicely. I enjoyed that they subverted expectations with the killing of Thanos. I liked that they immediately cut to 5 years later, and we got to see the world post-Thanos for a long time. I like what they did with the majority of the core initial Avengers characters. You know, I like where they took Thor's character. I like that they let him have this bittersweet victory that he then had to live with the consequences of for a long time. I liked that they made Hawkeye Ronin. I thought that was a really nice expansion to his character and added some weight to his character. You could feel his anguish because he lost his family. You know, I like that because of that, they also touched on Black Widow and Hawkeye's relationship a little more. I feel like the only underdeveloped character in this movie was Black Widow, and that's kind of the case in a handful of the Avengers films that she's in. She's always been just kind of this kick-ass character. She has a little bit in Winter Soldier, a little bit in Age of Ultron, but she still is kind of this character shrouded in mystery. And I'm gonna be honest, her death was not as impactful to me as a handful of the other moments to come later in the film. You know, I think that it sucks and it's sad, you know, because I didn't hate the character, but it wasn't as impactful even as Gamora's death was in Guardians of the or in Infinity War. I thought that her death felt more impactful to me, and she's not even been around as long as Black Widow has. You know, I think Black Widow's a badass, and I think she's kicks ass in all the films that she's been in, but I think the lack of expansion on her character let her death be a little bit of a crux. I feel like if Hawkeye would have died, it would have even felt a little more impactful to me personally. I like the time travel stuff. I like it a lot, personally. I like that they went with the Doctor Who model of time travel, where time is just...
more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
It leads to a more interesting experience because stakes aren't as severe as far as paradoxes are concerned and stuff. I know some people have a lot of issue with that, and I feel like they could have solved a certain part near the end of the film that I'll talk about a little better by explaining something a little more about that end part, but I'll get to that when I get to it. I like how they did time travel in this movie. I thought it was nice, I thought it was fun. I thought the teams that they had go to where they went was just as fun as it was in Infinity War. You know, I like that they kept Thor and Rocket together. I thought it was an interesting choice to go to Thor the Dark World. I know that's where that stone was, but it was weird that that was where they had to go. I liked Rhodey and Nebula. I know Nebula was kind of underplayed in this film as well, but her little bits I enjoyed. Like, I like that she was more of a presence in the film than I thought she might have been going into it, because by the end of Infinity War, she was one of the two Guardians left, and she was with Tony. What was gonna happen to her? You know. But I like how I like that she was used more in this film, and I like her presence, and I feel like she does still grow in her own way as a character. I like that Tony and Cap get along a lot in this film. I like that their dynamic is crisp. I love Cap. Captain America steals this movie. You know, every time he does a thing, it's amazing, including, but not limited to, one moment in the very end that I'll also get to later. I mean, it was so funny, so good. And Paul Rudd is such a gem. I love Paul Rudd. I love his presence earlier in the film when he's reacting to waking up basically in this post-Thanos world. I like his interactions with the other Avengers. He fits in like a glove. You know, it's dope. I like him in this film a lot. I do think the lack of consistent action was a little bit of a detriment to this film. There's a lot of setup in this film, and that's what makes the first act paced a little weird, because you have this kind of prologue scene where they wrap up everything from Infinity War, and then Endgame really starts. And that's, I feel like, a big problem I think people are having with the film. I think that it hurts that one of the first real big action scenes is when Cap is fighting Cap. Phenomenal scene. Cap has all the best action in this film, but I feel like if they would have done something else earlier in the movie, it would have been a little nicer. I like the Hawkeye scene. I think he's dope, but it goes by a little too fast, the Ronin Hawkeye scene. I think it's awesome, but I feel like they should have done a little more with it just to spice up the first act just a little bit more. I love Professor Hulk. Professor Hulk is awesome. I think that he is a huge... Like, I like how they brought that character into the fray. You know, I was talking to Kaylin from the Ed and Nettie streams about his character, and I agree that it would have been interesting to see them take Hulk in a different direction, but given this is what they were leading to from Ragnarok, I think that that's a great fleshing out of that character and make him a little more down to earth. I will say, though, the fact that they retroactively made 2012 Hulk a little goofier in his segment, I'm not too big on. I like the scene when they first get to 2012 and the Hulk's like fake smashing things, the Professor Hulk, but when he's goofier, like the 2012 Hulk, when he's goofier, it felt a little out of character with how that character was in that film. I liked that a lot. I really enjoyed the whole set piece in the 70s. You know, I liked that a lot. I loved Tony with his dad. You know, I thought that was awesome. I loved the beat with Steve and Agent Carter, I liked that a hell of a lot. You know, there was a tremendous amount of well-placed emotion in both of those scenes that, again, helped flesh out those characters even more so, given that this was their big send-off of a film. And I think all of this time travel, dimension hopping culminates to a really phenomenal set piece at the very end. You know, I thought it was smart to have Thanos come back, you know, even if he's a little underdeveloped because he is now the 2014 Thanos. I thought his presence was still really stern and strong. You know, the fact that he was still a match for the Avengers was great. I fucking love when Cap gets the hammer. I geeked the fuck out. That was a moment straight. Like, that was the comic book moment of the film. And then he finally gets to say Avengers Assemble. Those two parts, I geeked out the most. Seeing everybody come back really hit me right here. Peter talking to Tony for the first time got me choked up in a big fucking way. Because, again, I would die for that Peter Parker. I thought everybody in the big action scene has their moments, you know, and I think they all have the right moments. You know, I think it's cool that Peter gets to kind of swing around and do little bits of action. I like that he and Black Panther play into the toss, the what's it called when you're running around in a circle, you're passing the baton. That thing, I thought they did that really well. They utilized their powers in their own ways in quick little bursts. Giant Man punching a fucking whale was awesome. You know, Thor getting to do his own thing in his own kind of slow way that fit the character that he became was nice. Really, Hulk is the one character that is not a whole lot of use in this big action scene, and that's fine because there's a pantheon of other characters that get screen time here. You know, I like the whole A-Force teaser when they're helping get the gauntlet to where it's got to go. There's so much detail in that huge set piece action scene that reminds me a lot of the big action scene from the first Avengers. A lot of this film honestly reminds me of the first Avengers in its pacing and how it's done. And that's probably why I like it a lot, because the first Avengers is one of my favorite comic book movies ever made. I rewatch it every now and again, and there's still just this magical charm within its slower first act, its more action-centric second half, and its huge climactic third act. This has that same formula, only it has a prologue, some setup, a little bit of action, more action, and then a big set piece. You know, it's just a longer version of that. I think the 3 hour time is kind of needed to do everything this film needed to do, and I really liked the send-off of Tony and Cap. I love the moment when Iron Man, you know, I thought his death got me choked up. It was really sad. It was a sad scene in the movie. It was impactful. It was done. It was handled really well. You know, they didn't give him that speech, but they gave him a speech immediately after. So you had to feel the force of his death, the brunt hit of his death, followed by one last big monologue from him. You know, that was really touching. And that whole sequence was awesome. I like how it was put together. I think it was nice. It was a nice, quick subversion of the snap into Tony's hands, you know, great sacrifice. And then to Steve, to be able to have his life, to live his life how he wanted to, and to finally get his dance with Peggy. Fucking awesome. I know a lot of people take issue with how time travel in this movie is explained versus how Cap got to get back to that timeline and age. And I will say it was explained poorly. But I feel like if they explained how we modified your device, now you can hop between timelines, it would have been a clean way to do it. Just a quick little line to explain that would have eliminated mounds of criticism that this film has gotten for that moment. He basically had to pocket TARDIS, was how I viewed that segment. And I thought it was fine. I liked it. The one thing I wish they would have done was, instead of have a mid-credits scene, have the mid-credits be Steve returning the stones. Have him running past these characters that they're in the credits. You know, you can have him run through Thor: The Dark World to stick Natalie Portman again. He sticks her. Woo! Her face is shocked because she got pinned with a needle, and you can see her credit. Running by Loki, you can see his credit, you know? Stuff like that. It would have been a nice, stylish way to close out this film since there's no mid-credits or end-credits scene. You know, you can even have him doing other things like Wake Up Quill on the Guardians planet and stuff like that. You can even have him because Black Widow's still going to have a movie. It could be set in the timeline where Steve comes back, he stops them from sacrificing herself, and he returns the Soul Stone, leading up to her film, whatever that may be. Given her film as a prequel in some timeline, I don't know, but that's what I would have liked to have seen. And then you could close it with him showing up at the ball where you can see Peggy's face, seeing him for the first time, and then it cuts to the title, all that sort of stuff. That's what I would have liked. That's how I feel like this movie should have ended. But that's me. I still really enjoyed this film. I still think it is a top-tier Marvel film, personally. I give it an 8 out of 10. I give Infinity War a 9 out of 10. I don't know, I didn't talk about that much in this review, but I just kind of wanted to get my more thoughts about Infinity War out there since I just kind of included it in my year-end wrap-up, and it's part 1 of this part 2 of this 2-part film story. That's my thoughts on Infinity War and Endgame. People wanted me to do a spoiler one. That's why I did it. What did you think of Infinity War? Have you seen it? If you haven't, why did you watch this video? But if you've seen it, what did you think of it? I don't plan on tackling blockbusters much in this segment, but I felt like because this was such a monumental movie, I would still talk about it because I did really enjoy this film, and I wanted to kind of defend some of its criticism that it's gotten that I saw fit to defend. But those are my thoughts. Yeah, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. I have been ViralRak. You guys have ideas, lessons, situations, and I'll see you another day.